Welcome to Messy Christian Mamas. We are three Christian moms with a progressive mindset and loving hearts and minds. We are imperfect humans, but we're all loved in God's sight. At some point, we've all felt like the church and Christianity may not have been for us, but God isn't looking for perfection. He's just looking for you.
We are not experts in Christian theology, and we do not represent any particular Christian faith or church. We are simply here to be authentic, and we hope you join us on this journey.
Welcome back to Messy Christian Mamas. I hope you're all doing well and had a great week. We're excited to be back. This week we've got a really fun episode with some friends, and we'll get into that in a second. But this is Kendra.
This is Kaylee.
And that gust of wind you just heard leave the room was Ashley. This is not Ashley's voice.
She'll be back momentarily.
So today we have a great topic. This is an interesting month for us in the Atlanta metro area. This is Pride Month in Atlanta. So I know that it's June in most of the country, but in Atlanta we celebrate Pride in October. So
Because it's too hot in June.
because June, come on, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We are not going to march. We are not going to march in June.
No way, no way.
We're not that proud.
So our topic, well, first I'll say that this is going to be our gayest episode ever.
Yeah, even our yarn monster is rainbow color. We're super excited.
And all of us here either are gay or we love us some gays. And first, let's introduce our guests. We have with us
Robbie Martin.
and
Shirley Brown.
welcome. We're so glad you two are here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, we're excited.
Our OG listeners.
I know they were at our,
Yeah,
they were
our
the
guinea
first
pigs.
people that heard this
Yeah,
podcast.
they were our guinea pigs.
We loved it.
A
Yes,
VIP
we
listening
still do.
partner party.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, with our wine and cheese. We made it classy for them.
It was a fun night, though. It was a fun night, and I think that night we realized, like, oh, this wasn't us just playing around, but this actually might be good.
Yeah, no, we got y'all gave us really good feedback that night.
Really
too,
good feedback.
It's been great.
Yeah, we love you guys.
Well, we love you guys too. They're dear friends of ours, and let's talk a little bit about you guys, if you don't mind. Would love to know how you were raised in terms of faith.
Well, I'll go first. This is
Okay.
Shirley, and I went to, I was raised here in Peachtree City at the Methodist Church, and it was great. I was in the youth group. It was, one of the quote unquote popular youth groups in Booth Middle School at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Had so much fun, had the most fun preacher of any church. And we went through communion, did all that, turned 14, and Methodist Church kicked them off to another Methodist church. So we got a new preacher.
Oh, okay.
And just by coincidence, when that preacher started, they decided they wanted to build a new church. So my 14-year-old self was going to church every Sunday, listening about tithe. And I was like,
the worst.
I don't have anything to tithe. I only have a small allowance. And so I kind of drifted off from there, went to college and decided I believed in reincarnation. So drifted further away from the church.
Yeah.
And stayed away pretty much until we found Christ Our Shepherd Church. And the reason we found that is we knew so many people from the church that were just so kind. And when they legalized same-sex marriage, Robbie and I started looking for a preacher to marry us. And that's how we found our church. And it's made such a difference in our lives, I would say.
That's pretty cool. Robbie, what's your history with faith look like?
Not a lot.
Yeah, that's okay.
I mean, when we were growing up, my dad was from Forsyth County, and his parents were religious, as far as, very Southern Baptist. And my mom went to church when she was young, and when we were little, we went to church. We moved here when I was 8. And we didn't really find a church. And my dad owns his own business, or did. And so he worked all the time. So he worked on Sundays. So we quit going to church, and I didn't know anything about church it always bothered me a little bit, And so I was an athlete in school. So I went to fellow Christian student athletes and joined that. And then we had horses, and a lady and her daughter came and boarded a horse with us. And it was really cool because Marion was so nice and sweet, and her mom was the coolest lady ever. and her husband had started a church in Fayetteville called Baraka Baptist Church. And so we all just loved each other, and they took me to church and taught me all about Jesus Christ and how I should be and all that. And so I always was fearful about church. You're going to go to hell. You're going to, you can't be this person or that person. So that's the only thing I've ever known about church. So I was very scared, when I realized I was gay.
You did play on their softball team, though.
I did, and I knocked the girl out at home plate and got kicked out of my first game. But I was an aggressive woman back in my day.
It says a lot about you
Yes.
for people who don't know you.
Yeah. But that is true. I did get kicked out. That was great. I forgot about that. But anyway, so I didn't have a whole lot of church experience until Shirley and I have been together for 32 years, and we were not going to get married until it was legal. And when it became legal, it was a funny story because we didn't even know they had voted on it that day. Her mom called us, and then a friend of ours, Catherine Sanderson, called, and another friend and another friend. They all had gone online and became ordained all of a sudden. And they called us and said, "Guess what? I can marry you. I know y'all have always wanted to be married." And I was like, "No, I'm going to get married in a church by a pastor." And they're like, "Yeah, good luck in Fayetteville." And it was just the most amazing thing. And that's why we're at this church, is because we came here and talked to Miriam and Fritz. And they were like, "Why won't we marry you?" And we're like, "Really?" And they did. And now we've been a member of the church ever since, which has been 8 years. And it has changed our lives.
Yeah.
And you
that's
guys
the
have
truth.
changed the church.
We have,
Yeah.
well,
You have.
Yes.
Yes.
Ashley is back, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
For our listeners,
Magically appeared back.
I think if you have been raised in church like most everybody here has been, and we weren't, and I wasn't at all, it is the most amazing feeling to be 60 now, but 8 years ago, to walk into this group of people who married us and has loved us and doesn't judge us. I never thought I'd have that feeling my whole life because I was so afraid of being gay.
Yeah.
And I love y'all, and it has changed my life.
Can I ask why you guys didn't do like a legal partnership? Like why you were waiting? I totally respect the reason why you would wait until it was legalized, but there were a lot of people that went out of state or did like a legal contract. What was your reason for waiting to be married
For
officially?
me, a lot of family members and friends were not all about it for us. They didn't believe in lesbian marriages or any of that stuff. And for me, I wanted a pastor to marry me and it to be legitimate. And you only got invited to our wedding if you believed in it and you would back us and you showed our love. And it just, I didn't want just the paper. We had a will. We had, we don't have children. So as far as all
medical
that,
directives
we had
for each
all
other.
that for each other. We did everything legal, but I wanted to be married in front of God and my friends and my family. And y'all, it was the best day of my life.
The pictures are amazing.
But y'all, it was weird
So
because
sweet.
people came that loved us, and the ones who were even questioning our relationship that didn't come, every one of them says that they feel guilty. So that's what I waited. That's what I thought we did.
That's beautiful. So I thought we might talk a little bit about when you knew you were gay, if you guys don't mind. And I'm happy to go.
You go first.
Too. So I haven't talked about it on the podcast, but I'm bi, and my journey is, I don't know, I feel like everybody's journey is probably different from everybody else's. But I didn't know that I was gay from a young age, but I definitely had attraction to girls when I was very, very, very young, as far back as I can remember, in fact. And it really wasn't until much later, if I'm really honest, even long after I was a married woman, that I finally decided to give myself a label, accept who I was, and said, this is who I am. I've always been afraid of this part, compartmentalized it and said, like, this is just a thing, and I'm going to push it back in the corner. And I'm a straight married woman, and I am a married woman, but I'm a bisexual married woman, and it's just who I am. And I don't know that there's necessarily a whole lot more to it than that for me, but yeah, that's, I guess, sort of what my journey looks like. What about you ladies?
I think there is such a spectrum. I mean, you really go from 0 to 100. Or we just went to a wedding yesterday or Sunday, and a lady that officiated the wedding came up to me. She said, "I'm a 2.5 on the Kenzie scale." And I was like, "Right, what's the Kenzie scale?"
We did not know.
I'm a big believer in the Kenzie
So
scale.
now that I know, it made me laugh because I was like, "Okay, officiate. I'm a 6, but you do you." I did always have a feeling. Like I would always have crushes on girls, and I knew that I was not having the same feelings that my friends were, not towards each other, but I just knew they talked differently than I did and felt differently than I did. But it wasn't a big deal. We were born and raised in the 70s and 80s. It just was not a thing.
I didn't know a single gay person growing up, and we had one boy that everybody assumed in high school, but there was no gay people. So
And
I
he was
didn't even relate
terrorized,
to it.
I'm sure, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I finally got to college and got a defined real crush on a girl who was 2 years older than me and had her own crushes on other people, not me. But I was like, oh, now I kind of understand. But now what am I going to do this? Because I've been dating the same guy since I was in 10th grade. We both went to college together. We graduated. We got married. We were going to have 2 kids. We were going to have the picket fence. We were going to have 1.5 dogs, or however that works out.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, I was like, I cannot fake this. This isn't going to work. And I had told him and my sister both that I think I might be gay. And before I got married, and they had both said, no, that's normal.
And
That's
you
just
got to tell
normal
him
feelings.
what you said, why you thought you were gay, because you saw Demi Moore on TV and you thought she was hot. And
She
every
is hot.
living person thought she was hot. That's the only
Yeah,
reason,
it's like-
right? Yeah, that was they're like, whatever. So everybody thinks Demi.
But I was really serious about it.
I know
So
you
they said it was normal, which now makes, looking back, I'm like, Debbie, do you need to tell me something? Maybe that's not normal. But so then after I got divorced, and Robbie and I knew Robbie since I was 13, but had never thought anything at all about her until one day I did. And then I was at home, and I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be feeling like. This is it. And I was so proud, and I was so happy. I could have shouted from the rooftops. I mean, I didn't feel embarrassed or afraid or any of that until, later when I started thinking about it. I'm going to get in trouble or people are going to ostracize
No,
me.
your skin finally fits.
Immediately it fit. That's right. My skin finally fit, and I was so happy. And then 32 years later,
Yay.
I'm on a podcast.
Yeah, Shirley is the coolest girl I know. I mean, she was comfortable in her skin. She wasn't scared. She told people, I think I might be gay. Me, I told no one. I had a boyfriend and a girlfriend for 9 years, different boyfriends and girlfriend. I lived with someone for 9 years. When I was right out of college, I went 1 year to college, but I did not want to be gay. I thought it was an oops. I thought that this just happened to happen, and this is no way that I'm really gay. And I had boyfriends, and I dated guys, and I love men. So I'm bisexual. I've been with more men than I've ever been with women.
Kenzie scale number.
I don't know, whatever you think.
We're all on the
Whatever
scale
you think.
somewhere.
But it was so weird. It was
We like the
just
16
weird.
personalities test again. We're like, during break, we'll be like, all right, well, everyone's got to do their Kinsey scale.
But, I didn't want to be gay. I didn't want to. I knew my family would be embarrassed. I knew that I would go to hell. I thought it was a sin. I didn't want to be gay. I mean, y'all, I didn't. And I didn't think I was. I just accidentally lived with someone for 9 years. We had an extra bedroom that was hers. We never, ever went to a gay bar. I mean, I never did any of that stuff. So I'm so closeted. And then we break up, and Shirley breaks up, and I'm like, oh my God, there's this woman who loves me and doesn't care what anybody thinks and doesn't care what she can say what she wants. But she was the most badass woman I know, because she didn't care what they thought. And that made me not care as much. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, oh, yes, I'm gay. I mean, now I'm 60, so now I can say it out loud. But it's still not easy in Fayette County.
Yeah.
But so
And I think for both of us too, when we got married, something also switched. Like before we were married, we work in Fayetteville. We work in a male-dominated industry. We never said anything about our relationship to anybody else because, we've got to make money and sell plants, and they're not going to come to two lesbians, to buy their stuff. So anyhow, we were closeted to a certain extent. But when we got married, something happened.
It was the best
and I was
day.
just like, Give me my rainbow earrings. I don't care.
And I could breathe. I could breathe, and now I'm not ashamed. And that comes from church.
Yeah.
Even though Shirley's the most strong person and gave me confidence in myself and made me not dislike myself, church there were people that just be like, how's it going? And I could tell when they looked at us, they weren't looking at, there's the gay people. I mean, they may have been doing that, but they would be like, that's the cool gay people. This is awesome. We got gay people in our church. But it's the only place I've ever felt 100% not judged and loved. And so that gives us strength to do the podcast.
Shirley, you said that you were afraid the business is going to be affected.
Sure.
Was it?
Well, we didn't come out until really to our customers, unless we knew that they were friends of ours. And then we would slowly, say, we live together, would you like to go to dinner or whatever? But no, we still don't really walk around holding hands at work.
No, it's definitely different. We had a customer, which I talked about it once before, but one of our employees came to me and said that they had seen Shirley and I at the bar after work in Fayetteville. And
hamburger stand.
The hamburger stand in Fayetteville.
Yeah. Not the bar. We were just at the hamburger place.
Okay. And so I was going to make sure I ran back into this guy at the same restaurant. It took us several visits, but one visit we were there. I mean, I'm serious.
Just posted up outside.
Yes. and we came in, but we were going somewhere, so we were dressed up. He didn't recognize us. And so we were sitting at the bar having a drink, and I knew he was. He came in with a Sturgis shirt on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been to Sturgis. Is it not the coolest thing ever? And we talked for 15 minutes and laughed and connected. I got up to leave, patted him on the back and left. And then the other employee came in that night too. And he came in the next day and he told me he had no idea why he said that about y'all. Why would he not trade with y'all just because you're gay, and that he will trade with y'all from now on, that y'all are good people. And I thought that was funny, but yes, it does affect our business. And we don't think it's anybody's business,
Yeah. I think it's a fear of label. I think it's people hear a label and they immediately are like, oh, well, our society or the way I was brought up or our religion says that we don't like that.
That's exactly
But then it's really hard to hate someone you know.
Yes.
So as soon as you make so as soon as you make a personal connection to someone, it's really hard to then say, well, I still hate that person when you have a personal connection. There are lots of things that people do that we don't like.
Yeah.
But that's never something that you should turn around and be like, oh, well, I'm never going to even have a conversation with that person because of this particular thing.
It's really tricky. I think that's one of the reasons I hesitated to label myself for so long and to embrace who I was for so long. But the first person I told was my husband. We were having dinner one night and I said, I think I'm bi. Brad goes, yeah, I know.
He already knew. That's awesome.
That's I was just waiting for you to catch up.
It's hilarious. Well, I think a lot of people have the same reactions. I think a lot of people have the same reactions when it comes to disabilities. I think people, we're definitely having that same visceral reaction to religion and to race and everything. And it's one of these things where you just see those barriers will always break down as soon as you humanize the person and as soon as you establish a personal connection. And I think
Neurospiciness.
Right? I think that's where the grassroots effort really needs to be, because you have the top layer saying, we've talked about in this political environment right now where it's just coming down that you have to hate each other. You have to divide, and it's easier to conquer a divided source.
Mm-hmm.
You divide people into sections and you train them to hate each other. It's very easy to control the populace that way.
Yeah.
But as soon as people start making connections and everything, it's really hard to control someone if you're saying, well, no, but I do like this person. This person is a good person. It doesn't matter who they're sleeping with or what color their skin is or what God they worship. They're good people. So why should I hate that person? I think once people start questioning that status quo, that's where you start to see change. I mean, that's how civil rights movement happened. That's how the women's rights movement happened.
Yeah.
That's how the gay rights movement happened. All of those happened because people were willing to step out and say, no, you don't get to tell me I have to hate this person.
Right.
Well,
and I think, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
And I think fear is what drives people into those teams. The fear of anything that's different, and then certain groups of people like magnifying that fear to try to get people into teams. But
Well, and I also think the larger crowd, the popular crowd, the crowd that is judging, I think they, as a group, can take a certain power from being superior to these marginalized people. Like, you're going to go to hell, but I'm not. And it gives them, maybe not even consciously, but it just puts them up a little bit until they realize that they may love you and don't want you to go to hell. And then that's what you're talking about when it just kind of brings you all back together.
I had an interesting experience with a family member that I came out to where I shared my identity with them, I suppose. And then they said to me, I'll always love you, but God is the same God yesterday, today, and tomorrow, implying that God would not love me. And it took me some time to really process that and understand, one, what that person meant by that, and two, how I really felt about that. Because that, at that point, I was pretty secure in my faith. When I finally did that, I felt like God put in my heart to not compartmentalize this part of myself, but to share it. And then that pushed me back a few steps and made me go, whoa, wait a second. I feel like I need to dig into my faith a little bit more and figure out how I actually feel here.
Yeah.
That was tricky for me.
Makes
I
sense.
think for some people, it's not. I think that they have a fear, if they love you, that you won't be accepted by God.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. They do.
where were you living when were you in New York?
When I came
Came
out?
to terms. Mm-hmm.
No, I was here.
Okay.
It's pretty wild.
Welcome to Georgia.
Might have been easier in New York.
Nothing's gayer than Georgia.
This weekend. That's for sure. The crosswalks are already painted right now in Georgia. So.
So many people are angry that Pride is celebrated. Why do you and Shirley get a day of Pride? Why didn't everybody just celebrate? And I'm like, I can't explain it to you. But, if I have to explain it to you, it just isn't worth explaining to you.
Okay, so here's something that occurred to me the other day. So this same point, I don't remember who brought it up, but brought up Pride, brought up Black Lives Matter, and why, some people asking, like, why do you have to recognize these specific groups?
Yeah.
And then that evening on my social media feed came across NFL teams. No. It was the Peachtree City Police wearing pink badges, and then the NFL teams with their pink
Shoes.
I want to say costumes. Uniforms. Thank you.
I mean, they basically are costumes. Let's be honest.
That's funny.
They're performing. They're not playing football.
Right.
But no one would say, why do we have to talk about breast cancer in the month of October?
Right.
All cancers are a concern.
Right.
Right.
You're right. That's it. Right.
Of course they are. But we dedicate special time to bring awareness and, some education around breast cancer in the month of October.
So it was one of these things where it was like, when you talk about trans life matter, all lives matter, but trans lives matter in the respect that they're not being treated equally. So we're not trying to say, well, they're special and you put them on a pedestal. We're just bringing awareness just the same as we do with Breast Cancer Awareness Month and Autism Awareness or Indigenous Peoples Day. Like, no one argues these things, and it's one of these things where it's like, we shouldn't argue this either. You should just accept the fact that it is putting a focus on it, and it's bringing awareness to the fact that people aren't treated equally. And if you do think that all lives are being treated the exact same, I invite you to open your eyes, because you are living in a shiny little bubble where everything is prismatic, and you are not seeing the truth of what is actually
I think
going
a lot
on.
of people do feel that way, though. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people do feel like that's a myth.
And I think it's not always intentionally malicious.
Yeah.
But it is still a power dynamic that is damaging.
That's a good way to put it.
Well, I think it's hard to understand. I think it's hard to understand in your own feelings that bringing somebody up is not pulling you down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
One doesn't have to, both can be true. You can stay up here and you can lift somebody up to your level and you're both fine.
Yeah. One of my favorite shirts is like, just because people want equal rights doesn't mean like your rights are limited. It's not pie.
Right.
It's like just because we want everyone to have an equal slice doesn't mean we have to borrow from other people's slices. It's not pie. Everyone can be treated on an equal. Everyone should be treated on an equal playing ground.
The table just gets bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
It's
I was like,
mana.
there's not. Yeah, there's not. There isn't a set number of civil rights. There isn't a set number of places at the table. We have leaves that we're able to put into the table. And that is what being Christ-like is. It is accepting and not just, I hate the word tolerate. Like tolerant is one of my number
It's a
one.
terrible word.
I hate that word. When people are like, well, we have tolerance or we tolerate. And I'm like, you're putting up with. Like that's what tolerance is.
Right.
You're putting up with it. You don't agree with it, but you're just going along with it because it's easier to go along with it than it is to kind of step up and say your piece. Accepting and loving and being wholehearted, embracing, those are Christ-like. Jesus didn't tolerate anything. He either accepted it or he didn't. Like those were the two. Like you were either saw in your heart that you were a good person and it didn't matter what happened in your past. But if your heart was pure, he accepted you. If your heart wasn't pure, didn't matter what seat you had at the Pharisee, like at the temple. If you didn't have a pure heart, he didn't accept you. You were a bad person. Mm-hmm. So to me, I'm like, if Jesus can make these distinctions and open his heart to all these people, then I don't understand why people use him and behind the cover of their church to say, well, we don't accept and we won't accept or we won't tolerate or we won't do this. Because I'm like, are you reading the same red words
Right.
that I am?
The reason why I asked where you were when you came out, I lived in Atlanta for 13 years and moved back to Fayette County. I'm from Fayette County. And just the differences in the feeling between those two places is significant. Sure. That in Atlanta, it's just like everyone is too busy to care what anybody else is doing. Yeah. So it's like, it's just not a big deal at all. And then here, it just feels stifling, this intolerance that is stifling, this judgment. And not just about Gabe, just about anything that's slightly different from this cookie cutter Stepford wife norm thing.
Class.
And I do think it's an environmental thing that people are born into this and they don't ever have a reason or ever push themselves to get out of their bubble to see that there are other places and other cultures and even just like, one city over.
Yeah.
So I think people should get out of their bubble, but
agreed. I think so. Again, I think everybody's journey looks different from everybody else's. For me, it was really once I started getting back into my faith, I really started learning a lot more about myself, like opening up myself to be a little bit more vulnerable with myself, to really see myself for the first time ever.
And it's so hard to be vulnerable when you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
If you're in an environment that does not feel safe, that feels stifling and judgmental.
And look, I lived in New York and in LA and in San Francisco, and it never happened in any of those places for me.
But you have community here.
But I have community here.
Yeah.
I had my faith here, and my faith made me feel safe.
Yeah.
My faith and this
that's beautiful.
This church.
Yeah.
This church
made me
a
feel
godsend.
safe to see myself.
Yeah.
It is a godsend.
We've talked about that too, about like how you can only accept grace when you have fully accepted all of yourself. So if you are denying parts of yourself because of fear of others or fear of the unknown or fear of what's going to happen, you aren't able to fully accept every single piece of yourself.
Right.
So you're never going to be able to accept God's grace. You're always going to think, well, that's not for me. Like that's for other people.
Yeah.
And I'm so great that you got it. I'm so grateful that you have it, but I'm never going to get it because this part is broken.
Right.
And as soon as you
This part
realize,
is bad.
this is bad. I don't like this part. This part is gross. Ugh. But as soon as you realize that all of those parts what God does with what Jesus and God do with all those parts is they connect them all together, and then the Holy Spirit comes in, and it's just like that, that Japanese art where they glue all the broken pottery together and with the gold. Kintsugi, yeah. Kintsugi, that's what the Holy Spirit is. Holy Spirit shines all through those broken parts and molds them all together to make something beautiful, and that's what grace is. So as soon as you start realizing that all these broken parts put together create a whole person, and you allow the Holy Spirit to come into you and you accept grace, then nobody can break that again. Like as soon as you accept that God has accepted you for who you are, and you are confident in that, nobody's going to trip you up again.
Right.
They're going to try because they've seen you broken before.
Right.
They're going to try to trip you up, but you know that there is, and you have a failsafe. There is no one who's going to be able to break you again because you are already broken. You already saw what happened.
Right.
Also, what I love about kintsugi is it takes things that are broken and makes it more valuable than it was even to begin with before it was broken. It puts gold in it.
Not just more subjectively beautiful, but objectively more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. It's gorgeous. Sorry. So I, for a very long time, was convinced that I was just completely straight. And then college hit, and I thought, well, maybe I'm bisexual because college. And then I was I was with someone seriously, and then I, went on a very weird path. And then when I had my daughter, I rejected everything, and then kind of like started trying to piece my life back together. And so I didn't know what all the letters were in the rainbow alphabet. And I keep thinking of the episode we did with the girls when Olivia said that she was a supporter of the LGBTQIA, and Addison, without skipping a beat, was like the blah, 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 what? And that was like, and she didn't mean anything by it. She just was like, she had no idea. And like Olivia was like very patient. I was like, LGBT. They were so cute. But like to me, like that was kind of the same reaction that I had because I was like, there's so many letters. So I actually looked them up, and I kind of did some serious soul searching of what I actually am. And I would say, I will do the Kenzie scale because I have no idea where I am on the Kenzie scale. But I would say that like romantically, I am straight. I prefer to have romantic partners with men. Sexually, probably bi-curious. I've had relationships with women in the past. I've had relationships with trans people in the past, men and women in the past, and straight men in the past. So I think it's this bi-curious, more of like a kind of under the queer umbrella where, I'm not really straight, but I'm not really gay. I'm kind of curvy. kind of wavy.
You're queer.
Yeah, like the hair is not straight. It's not curly. It's kind of wavy. And then I went to polyamorous, and I was like, no, I really think this is kind of where I am too, which I've been single
definition
for.
of that?
Polyamorous is people who prefer non-monogamous relationships with multiple people. So I don't do well with monogamy, which is weird given the fact that I have like the most stable married parents in the world. And both my sisters are married and have very...
That's probably why.
I'm probably like the black sheep of the family being gross. I don't want to do that. So, but to me, like, monogamy has never felt comfortable to me because I am such an outgoing person, and I get interested in people so easily that to me being polyamorous just makes more sense. So I do see where it can be an issue. Like you have I'm not a jealous person, but I could see where it would be an issue if you have a jealousy or envy issue. But to me, having these friends with benefit, like that's what to me polyamorous kind of is in my head. It's these friends with benefits relationships where you have these connections with people and they fill different needs for you. So polyamorous couples, some are like, you might have like a sexual polyamorous coupling with someone, but then you have an intimate polyamorous coupling with a different person. And one could be a straight relationship, another one could be a bi relationship, another one could be a gay relationship, a trans relationship. It's just filling different needs. And to me, I find it very hard to believe that one person could tick all the boxes for me personally. I see where it works for other people, like my parents, but for me personally, I just don't think one person. I think that's a big job
Yes.
to fill.
That's a
Like
full
I have a
calendar
lot of
also.
boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is also one of these things where I'm, as a single mom, I also have to then think in my head, like, how do I then explain that to my daughter? Because I don't want her to look at me having relationships with other people thinking, well, is that what you do? And it's like it's one of these things where I don't want to tell her, like, you have one person for the rest of your life and a soulmate situation and that's it. But I also don't want her to be like, I also don't want to tell her to be like, yes, like, go for it. So
No.
it's one of these things where I'm just kind of like,
It is so tricky.
yeah, it's a really tricky situation. So I'm just like, well, just kind of cross those bridges as we come to them.
Yeah.
She's 9, so I don't think we have to cross any bridges
Probably not.
right now. She's dealing with crushes right now, so we'll
And
be.
it's
we'll
hard
be
for
okay.
us as a gay couple, and maybe one of the most stable couples in our nieces and nephews' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had 2 of them come out, and it wasn't great for us. We're like, oh, don't do as we do. Do what's going to be good for you. But it is good for them.
But it
They've
is good
settled
for
in,
them,
and they're
right?
great now, and we love their partners. But it was hard as
And-
they're
How long have you two been married?
married for 8 years.
And how long have you been together?
32.
32.
Oh.
That's, I mean,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
that's such a huge accomplishment.
It was when not knowing how to identify, the younger generation loves to shock us anyway. And so we had a young man that came to stay with us that we kind of adopted. And he told me, John Moore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he first thing he told me, I hadn't seen him in a year, and he's like, what did he say? Polyamorous.
Maybe.
And I was driving to go get food, and I didn't even respond. I said, well, good for you. And he's 14, and he's explaining to me about his sexuality, and I'm like, sweetie, you got a long ways. You just need to relax. And you don't have to
You're
have
just
any
horny,
kind of-
right?
Those are
You don't have to
hormones,
identify anyway.
And then you came home and asked me what it was, and I was like, I don't know. Let me
You
look
didn't,
it
you
up.
didn't change your mind
Yeah.
8,000 times. I think that's another area you have to be really careful with too, though, is that, we are now raising a generation that has so much access
Yes.
to information, and most of it isn't great.
Right.
So
Right.
it's also kind of like navigating these channels with them. And I don't ever want to turn around, like, if my daughter ever turns around and says, well, Mom, I think I'm gay, or I think I'm queer, or I think I'm bisexual, I don't want to ever turn around and be like, oh, it's just a phase.
Mhm.
'Cause I think that's
Don't
super-
invalidate.
Yeah,
Don't
like I think
invalidate.
that's super.
Yeah.
I think it's super
That's a good
dangerous.
point.
But it is also one of those things in the back of my head. It's one of these things where I'm like, well, it could be, because you're so young, and you are going to, your hormones are psychotic right now. You don't really know what it is you like or don't like. It's gonna change a million times. So I think with parents, we just kind of have to go with the flow. Like, it's kind of one of these things where it's like, oh, okay, you think you're gay? Okay, great.
Just
Let's
like what
explore
you
that.
said about your identity, I think that wasn't a label that you would have known
Mm-mm.
when you were 9 years old. That
Right.
didn't exist at that
Mm-mm.
point in time, right? And
I think
so
we had two letters when we were growing up.
right,
We had G and L.
right. And so
That's it.
by the time Charlotte is your age, then who knows what other
Yeah.
letters will exist,
Yeah.
right?
I think we've talked about that a lot too, about how like gender is going to remain fluid and sexuality is going
will
to
be
remain
so
fluid. So I think it's one of these things where I think as parents, like, we have to really start realizing that we are in a river and we cannot be the boulder in the river. We've got to get a kayak, which is hard
Oh,
for
that's a great way to
Kendra and I,
say
because
it.
we're not
Yeah.
outdoorsy people. Ashley over here,
Yeah, you too.
she's already got her canoe and she's like, I'm on the river. I can navigate with you guys, no problem. Kendra and I are like on the raft, like holding hands, being like, oh God, is it over yet? Can we pack wine? Oh, gross. It's cold. So I don't like it. But I do think like that's something that we have to do as parents. I think we have to go with the flow. I think as soon as you turn around, especially with this new generation, and we see it with Gen Z already, and Gen Alpha is just going to be the same way. As soon as you turn around and tell them no,
Oh.
like that's not what you are, or I don't think that's correct, or this is just a phase, then they are going to go defiantly
Yes.
in that
Absolutely.
direction.
Right.
So I
Right.
don't want to be that damn, like I don't want to be that boulder.
How could you ever tell your child you're not something?
No,
Isn't
they don't do
crazy?
that. What they say is, I will not accept if you date a black person. Well, I do not believe in it. I don't think you should be able to do that.
Love my parents.
And then they say, I will not accept you if you bring home a gay person. If you're gay, I will not accept you. That happens in everybody's family.
But I think
And it
what
has
they're
happened
really
in
feeling is, I'm afraid for you to go down
Well,
that
what
path.
they-
Why
but-
don't you just be normal and be straight?
In
and-
every instance we know, the one that we're very close to, that we won't even talk names, but they know, but they did exactly what they were told not to do. The first thing they did, they weren't supposed to date a black person and they couldn't be gay. And they went and dated a black woman and did them both at once. And it was a life-changing moment for that family. So it's just funny to me. If you tell them not to do
Yeah,
it,
don't
they
say
will
no.
do it.
Yeah.
I do get
They
where
will
you're
do it.
coming from, Charlie, though. Like, it is out of a place of fear
sure
for,
is,
for
yeah, as
parents
parents.
and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's not being communicated
Yeah.
very well. I think it's one of these things, too, where it's like, when you start saying, like, well, are you sure? Or, you know, do you think that this is the best plan? Like, I know when I was in my first interracial relationship, my parents are two of the most open-minded people on the planet, but we do live in the South.
Yeah.
And so when I started dating a black man in the South as a white woman, both my parents came to me and said, we're not going to tell you that you can't, and we're not going to tell you that it's not a good idea. We just want you to be aware
Right.
that you need to be careful. And if you are getting these certain looks, and if you feel uncomfortable in a situation, then you and him need to be open and honest with each other and get out of that situation. Like, don't try to just say we can power through this and people will just have to accept it whether they like it or not, because that is not how the world works. And that is the other thing. Like, as a parent, I don't also want to give my child like uber defiance. Like, I don't want to also tell her, be like, well, F what everyone else thinks, because that's not how the world works either.
Right.
People get hurt and it's dangerous.
My child.
And marching to her own drum.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things where I'm like, I'm not saying that you can't be who you are, but you just need to be aware of your surroundings. And that's what my parents said to me. It was like, if you're going to go to these places where you know there could be potential issues, then you need to surround yourself with supportive people.
Right.
Like, don't go into these situations alone. So, like, that would be my suggestion to anyone who comes out to me as trans or gay, or as a young person, or is getting into, you know, a relationship. If they're a conservative Christian and they're getting into a relationship with someone who's Islamic, I'd be like, I'm all for it. I 100% support you, but I need you to be aware that not everyone is going to be supportive. So I just need you to surround yourself with supportive people.
That's right.
And don't put yourself in situations
Yeah.
where you can get backed into a
Right.
corner. And if you do get backed in a corner, I need you to have people on speed dial that can come and
Right. Right.
get you out. But now we're going to go to Ashley and tell her story. Her straight.
So,
Straight
yes,
little bunny.
I am straight as an arrow. I like the men's. Yeah, but I'm very artsy, so I've always been around gay people, and my parents raised me to be open-minded and non-judgmental. So I think that a lot of times when I go to new places, I feel like gay people like just find me immediately.
You grew up as a dancer. Come on.
Right, and
Right.
theater,
They're like,
and
she's-
singing, and
She's one.
everything, music, everything. Yeah. But I do feel like having like countless friends who were gay, I do feel like there is a genetic component to it. I've been with a lot of people who came out like through college, and I remember I had a friend who said like, the only choice I had about it is the choice to not lie anymore.
No, that's
Yeah.
a great way to say it.
That's
Yeah.
a good way.
So, yeah, I'm straight.
Yeah.
We support you.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. There has been times in the last like few years where you've been like, sometimes I kind of wish I wasn't.
Well, friends, come back and join us again next week for part 2 of this episode, because we're going to keep this party going. You don't want to miss out on that. But let's close out with a quick prayer, if you don't mind. Father, thank you for gathering us together today to celebrate all of the things that make us your children, unique, wonderfully, beautifully made. Help us to accept every part of ourselves, to love every part of ourselves. And as we go out into the world with those qualities, we help others do the same, to know you, to love you, and to be themselves as they do it. In your holiest of holy names, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Messy Christian Mamas. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, and Instagram. Until next time, embrace the mess, share the love, and shine your light bright, my friends.